Hello and welcome back to the channel. Um, Today I'd like to talk to you about a little exciting news for me. And it's exciting for me because I love the French language, so much so that I actually make a living by teaching other people how to speak it. And an exciting piece of news I wanted to share is that did you know that within the next couple of decades, by the middle of the 21st century, French is predicted to be the most widely spoken language in the world, or maybe even right up there alongside of Mandarin. And so that's exciting for me, being that I encourage everybody I can to learn how to speak French. And so I wanted to share, well, first of all, of course, I do have a slideshow. I like doing my slideshows with the pretty pictures and all that. So we'll get to one of those later. But um, first, I'd like to share an article from Forbes that's right on point about this. And of course, Forbes magazine and Forbes media are very business oriented. So this is coming at it from from a perspective of investment banking and whatnot. But again, it's right on point. And so this article was from, of course, quite a while ago, about a decade ago, but it's been updated within the last couple of years. And so it's written by Pascal Emmanuel Gobry. Um, and so it's saying that the language of the future could be French. And they're gonna reference a an investment banking study as proof of this. And he starts out talking about how French used to be so important, but and then going on to whereas English rose up, French was a little more important. And so, although I kind of disagree with that because French is still very important in diplomacy, and I'll show you little something about that later. As well as, interestingly, did you know in business, since we're talking business here, that French and English and Mandarin stand along each other as the three most widely used languages around the world in business. So they're already sort of neck and neck for that. And sadly, in the US, we have been losing our appreciation for the importance of the French language. And that's why I highlighted this one quote from a John McWhorter, who he said he was speaking out against, well, he was writing out against the bilingual school programs in New York City. And he went so far to say, let's stop pretending that French is an important language. Now, this annoys me for one because he's a respected linguist. He's an associate professor of linguistics at Columbia University, so an Ivy League school and everything. Um, but somehow he missed the memo about French. He missed the he missed the memo about French, that it's actually not just a language that used to be important. It's important right now and will gain importance in the future. And uh, we can see, of course, that why am I saying that French will be the language of the future? Well, business-wise and both and culturally speaking, it's gonna be spoken by 750 million people by 2050, which is about three-quarters of a billion people. And at that point, it will be around 8% of the global population, of the world's population. So pretty much neck and neck with Mandarin of how many of which language has the most speakers. But the thing is, so if just as many people speaking Mandarin as French, why is French a language of the future as opposed to Mandarin? Well, for one, Mandarin, China's population is in decline. So that's not really pushing towards a big growth of more and more people speaking the language. And also is not spoken and not used as an official language in nearly as many places around the world as French. For instance, we have, of course, French is it's a very fast-growing global language. Oh, I will talk about these pie charts a little later. These are summarizing some of the, um, well, results from the investment banking study that was done, um, quite a while ago. They had the data for 2010 and they're projecting for 2050. I'll talk about that a little later, but the point is that French is the fastest growing language in the world right now. So it's gonna surpass English and then it's gonna be neck and neck with Mandarin for the number of native speakers. But difference is French is used on 5 continents right now. It should be used on all the continents by 2050, which is a much bigger yeah, bigger spread than we can expect from Mandarin, where the population is in decline. So again, this is from Forbes Media, and the author's name is down there at the bottom of the last page. And now I'd like to add some stuff to it that's not just solely about investment banking and with one of my little slideshows, of course. And so let's get to it. There we go. So one thing I wanted to point out is that in addition to French being one of the three most widely used languages for business around the world, it's also still to this day widely used in international relations and diplomacy. I've got well, 8 examples of international things that are very much using French as an official language and as a usual language. The United Nations, the European Union, UNESCO, and NATO all use French as an official language. In addition, we have the International Olympic Committee, which, by the way, that was started in France many years ago. So this was actually started in France itself. And so that's also why whenever the Olympics are on, you hear the announcements in English and in French, and also in the language of whatever country is hosting the games, because English and French are both official languages of the International Olympic Committee. And the International Red Cross also uses French, as well as Doctors Without Borders. And so where would our world be without these humanitarian groups there? And so French is used for all that too. And French is also the language of some of the most, well, highest international courts, like in The Hague, for instance. And so this, the use of French still to this day for international relations and diplomacy is a little further proof that it might very well become the language of the future to a greater extent than Mandarin, for instance. And so what else? French is the fastest growing language in the world, which sometimes can be annoying to me as someone who teaches French and teaches about French, because it's hard to get an accurate statistic on how many French speakers are in the world because the number keeps growing so fast. All the data you're presenting is almost always outdated, if even by a little bit. Like I have here, 321 million speakers of French in the world. And by the way, only a decade ago, that was like 100 million lower. So this language is growing very, very fast. And It's spoken on 5 continents already, so that's vast usage around the world. So we're talking Europe, Asia, Africa, North America, South America, lots of places around the world. And I also mentioned where are all these flags from. All these flags are different member states of the Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie, otherwise known as the International Organizations for Countries where French is spoken and studied. There are 88 states and governments who are members of that, and this group does go really far towards promoting and sustaining the use of French around the world globally. And so 88 governments working together, that's a lot, and that's not forced to be ignored. It's not one that's easy to get around. And of course, French alongside English, these are the only 2 languages that are taught as a foreign language in every country around the world. And so that's also promoting French usage. More and more people are learning French, and much more so than Mandarin, for example. As French is already the 5th most widely spoken language in the whole world, and it's gaining. It is moving up, moving up, moving up. And I'll talk about that a little bit more when we go over those pie charts from the investment banking study that we saw earlier. And so, one reason that the French-speaking population of the world is growing so quickly is that France is, well, see all the countries in blue here on this map of Africa, these are Francophone countries. Francophone means French speaking. And although French is not the only language spoken in each of these countries, there are other languages is spoken there as well. Uh, does have official status and it's used widely in schools and all of that. And the thing is, sub-Saharan Africa is one of the parts of the world where the population growth is happening the fastest. And so along with population growth is going to come a growth for the French language. And that's yeah, it's gonna take a little bit more than just population growth. I'm thinking this is a little more complicated than what the investment banking study got into, but they were going mostly by population sizes of the countries. And given that there are people in these countries who speak other languages, and some of them don't even speak French, another important thing to gonna yeah, that the growth of French is going to have to rely on is that so that these countries in Africa still keep teaching French in their schools, right? That's part of what's keeping French having such a strong foothold there is education. And this has been very beneficial for very various parts of Africa too, because did you know that literacy rates have been on the rise in Africa for the last couple of decades now, getting better and better. And a lot of this is people learning how to read and write in French. So the 2 things are sort of literacy levels and use of French is sort of going in tandem with each other. So that's pretty cool. But I guess what I'm saying is that if French is not still taught in the schools or places where the population is growing so fast, then I don't think it would end up becoming the most widely spoken language in the world within the next couple of decades. I think this is going to have to depend very much on school and, of course, business, but education is a powerful uh, me- medium for promoting and sustaining a language. And so, getting back to the investment banking study that I mentioned earlier, this is the one reference in the article. And so notice we have some data from 2010 and compared to projections from 2050. And so what's going on here is that we have four pretty widely spoken languages are being compared to each other, and the biggest chunk, these are autres, others, all the other languages in the world. So those include about, 6,000 other languages, none of which are spoken by more than by even 3% of the world's population. And so the languages that are being compared here, Francophone, so French, Anglophone, English, Espanol is Spanish, and then Mandarin, Mandarin. So we got French, English, Spanish, and Mandarin. So this investment banking study projected that, notice that while English speaking is going to go down a little over the next couple of decades, you've got English speaking in 2010 being 8% of the population, and then in 2050, only 5%. So that's going down a little bit. Same goes with Mandarin. Like I said, China is undergoing population decline right now, so that's probably the biggest reason why Mandarin is predicted to go down, use of Mandarin anyway, from 10% down to only 8%. Now, while English and Mandarin are shrinking a little bit, we have both French and Spanish that are growing. And notice how Spanish is going to grow from about 6% of the world population up to 7% of the world population, becoming probably the third most widely spoken language ahead of English. And France is actually projected to grow so much more. Like I said, French is the fastest growing language in the world right now. And so, yeah, I guess 3%, jumping from 3% all the way up to 8% of the world population, that's huge. Part of this, again, is population growth, especially in Africa and also other parts of the world, and education, all very important. So that's very exciting for me that it's looking like France will be, and this will hopefully be within my lifetime. I hope to still be alive 26 years from now. We'll see, I guess. Um, yeah, that it will be so widely used. And so one thing I wanted to, well, tied together with this is it's really a shame that in the United States, we're speaking, we're teaching less and less French. Um, Whereas this is opposite to the global trends, where French is being learned more and more. I think in the US, we should really rethink this whole thing so that we don't fall behind other countries again. Um, and so, yeah, and I hope that some of the stats in this video have been convincing. Anyway, thank you so much to everybody who watches my videos, and especially to those who watch them to the very end. I really appreciate that so much. Please give this one a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. And so I guess I've had a lot of fun telling you about well, my excitement for the French language becoming one of the most or the most widely spoken language in the world soon. And so I guess I will, yeah, I will see you around next time. Bye bye.